The world of books, like any other area of interest out there, is laced with its own controversies, whether about an author's legacy or any other subjects that can come up. And one of the controversies that seems to survive the longest and to keep popping up every other day is whether audiobooks constitute reading, whether you're allowed to count them towards your reading goal. I will go online and I will see somebody post about how much they read or what they read this year or the year before, and then somebody comes and tells them, well, you didn't read anything actually, because these are audiobooks and they do not count. So I want to talk about whether they do count, why I believe they do, and why I believe that audiobooks and ebook readers are the best thing that happened to books as far as technology goes. My name is Ksenia Popovic. I'm an author of fiction, a mixed media artist. Welcome to my channel. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day out there. And please hit like, subscribe, share this video to your friends. Let's tell the algorithm that this is worthy content when it comes to talking about books, the arts, and culture. So what are the arguments that people who oppose giving consumers of audiobooks the status of readers? What is it that they say? What is it that bugs them? So first of all, they always talk about how reading physically compared to listening to an audiobook engages a different process in the brain, and therefore it cannot be compared. They feel that audiobooks are a bit of a way of cheating and not really reading. They tell us that when we listen to books instead of reading them, we miss the way a page is structured and sentences are formatted on the page, which in some works is truly important, and that because listening is passive, unlike reading, which is active, and because most people, while they listen to audiobooks, are multitasking and doing something else, retention and concentration is going to be lower, and therefore the reading experience is going to be diminished. And while all that might be true, to them I always say, okay, don't listen to audiobooks, because denying the worth of audiobooks to those of us who enjoy them and denying that they are reading is really trying to adopt a purist approach that takes away from the pleasure that people could have who don't have the time to read physical books, don't have the concentration. And I reject wholeheartedly the idea that unless you are obviously impaired from reading, you are unable to see, or you have any other difficulty to read, that unless you have those issues, you should not be consuming audiobooks. Or if you do, of course, because you're free to do whatever you want, then you shouldn't count them towards your reading goal. Here's why I disagree. First of all, oral transmission of stories. The oral tradition is much older than the written one. People were telling each other stories long before they invented writing and long before they invented the printing press and started distributing books on a wider scale. Are we claiming that the Iliad and the Odyssey did not exist and that the people who heard those stories before Homer wrote them down did not hear them, that they did not absorb those stories, that those stories didn't exist before Homer, that the Epic of Gilgamesh didn't exist before it was written down, that the Vedic hymns of ancient India didn't exist before they were written down? Come on, of course they did. And of course they were transmitted, and of course people absorbed and held those stories before they were able to read them. Also, because if we look at how many centuries people spent being illiterate, unless they were parts of the erudite elite or they were monks in a monastery writing down manuscripts, that would mean that literature did not exist until mass production of paperbacks, or that literature was only reserved to those few. To which I ask, are we also going to say that Shakespeare and his plays and his sonnets did not exist for the people who went to see them, to listen to them, to hear them, to absorb them, who enjoyed them for centuries, that did not exist and that was not worth anything until it was printed in a book, in a volume, in a physical volume? I don't think so. And while you obviously technically are not reading, you are listening, you are still retaining the same story. The story and the language are being processed. Our brain is recognizing what is being told to us, and we are absolutely able to retain everything that book contains. Are we going to say that if I read half of a book and then listen to the second half, I didn't finish that book? Even though I went through the whole thing, retained the whole story, and know everything that happened in it, and was able to feel everything that the author wanted to convey, I didn't finish the book. I'm very passionate about this topic because I don't think that the brain and the soul really care how a story is being absorbed, as long as it gives them the emotion, it gives them the meaning, it gives them all the layers that the author intended and that are going to awaken something in the person consuming this story. And I believe that audiobooks have given a wonderful opportunity not only to people who are unable to physically read or have difficulty doing so, but also to people who are too busy to do it, to people who have any kind of time constraints or space constraints, and who simply want to enjoy books. And in that sense, especially now that we're living in an era where we are so addicted to quick entertainment and to dopamine hits, such a slow process, a slow burn as reading a book or listening to a book should be encouraged in every single way, instead of shaming people because they are not reading the way you think is the right way to read. I love audiobooks because they keep me company. I'm alone a lot. And they are a way to have somebody with me who is telling me a story in a beautiful way. Often these interpretations are marvelous. I also love being able to do something useful while doing something useful, meaning that I don't tend to listen to new music. I'm kind of stuck with my music taste in the 90s when I was a teenager in the grunge era. And I cannot listen to the same songs a million times, although I probably have listened to them over a million times. But I also want to hear something new and absorb something new. And audiobooks allow me to do that while I'm doing boring, repetitive tasks, such as chores, such as cleaning, such as driving, walking, doing certain types of exercises. It is excellent company. Another way that they are super useful is when I go to bed. So besides the fact that I can be very tired at night because I've spent the day in front of my screen either writing or consuming content or whatever I was doing, and then when it comes time to go to bed, my eyes are too tired to read, but also my husband has a very dramatic way of going to bed. So I will be in bed reading my book and he will arrive like he's about to die from how sleepy he is. He's very theatrical about it. And he will basically collapse into bed and just be lights out. And then he will not tell me to turn off my light, but I will feel guilty because, he's sleeping and I'm there with a strong light to be able to read. So what I will do, I'll just close my book, turn off the light, put in my AirPods if I can find them, because that's not always a given. In which case I will wake him up because I will turn on all the lights to find them, but that's another story. And I will just lie down in the dark and listen to my book until it's time to fall asleep, which I absolutely love as a way of falling asleep. I think that it's a beautiful thing. I also feel that audiobooks make certain genres more fun than they are when you read them. And I will give you some of my favorite audiobooks that I think are great to get you started. And one of them, everybody says, is much better as an audiobook, even though it's a great read also, the way it is written. But I think for certain genres, it makes them a lot more fun because some actors are simply fantastic at the way they make audiobooks. And if a book doesn't require full academic brain power, then yes, I will gladly listen to it in audiobook. I usually listen it at normal speed if it's a book that is serious, that needs me to catch a lot of nuance, to recognize what is being told between the lines, while if it's a lighter read, very plot driven, then I can go to 1.25 or 1.5 speed, but I will never ever read faster than that. I know there are people who read, who listen to audiobooks at double speed or even triple speed. I don't know how they are able to retain anything at that speed. They claim that they can do it. I'm not saying that they are lying. I'm just saying that for me, that is an impossible task. And that to me no longer feels like listening to a book or reading a book. It feels more like background noise and content consumption. Now, all that said, I often talk to my friends about audiobooks. They are quite famous in the West, especially in the English-speaking world. I don't know about other Western countries, but I imagine that they are also quite present in other areas. But when it comes to the Balkans, which is where I come from, they are not at all present in our language. They might exist as a niche category somewhere, but I have no idea where they are sold, where they are distributed. I once realized at a book fair that I was artistic director of, that the Association of the Blind of Montenegro, I don't know if you're allowed, if there is a politically correct term in English. I have no idea, and if I said this wrongly, I apologize. I don't know of any other term. But anyway, I found out that they had CDs back at the time of CDs where Montenegrin actors had read several books, including mine. And nobody had ever asked me for rights or, for any kind of permission to do that. But because it was that association, what was I going to say? Of course, I was going to be okay with it. But other than that, I have never seen them distributed anywhere. And when I talk to people who do speak great English or wish to improve their English about listening to audiobooks, they usually tell me that they've tried and were unable to, that they didn't enjoy it, or they failed to concentrate on the story. And that can be an issue at the beginning. But I always say, if you are able to listen to a podcast, you're going to be able to listen to an audiobook. Now, maybe you will need to slow it down, and every single audiobook program or app allows you to slow the book down or to make it faster and to adjust the speed to your liking. But if you struggle to follow, you can always go back. There is that go back 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Some apps let you even set it to how many seconds you want to go back and forth. So in that sense, it's great. And if your concentration fails and you get distracted, you get to go back. Now, people get distracted a lot while physically reading too, so I don't see why that would be a bigger issue than it is when you read. Like I said, if you can follow a podcast, you can follow a book. It's a matter of choosing which books to follow. Now, another thing that people find a bit difficult in the beginning to get used to is the interpretation, because you will have, for instance, a female voice and she will be doing men's voices and children's voices, and she will be changing her own voice to accommodate that. And that does sound a bit strange at the beginning, but then you get used to it and you don't even pay attention to it anymore. I still have difficulties with certain books and certain genres in spite of being an avid listener of audiobooks. For instance, there are certain interpretations that I will not be able to listen to because the actor or actress just overdoes it. So, for instance, there was an actress who read Fredrik Backman's Beartown trilogy. And so Fredrik Backman is a wonderful author of comedies, and we will talk about him in more detail. But Beartown is a much more serious subject where he did not go into comedy at all. And the main characters are teenagers. So the actress who read this interpreted these teenagers in this annoyed, exaggerated, over-affected manner that bothered me to no end, and I DNF'd. I actually shut it down and simply went for the written version. I couldn't handle it. And there were other instances where actors were overzealous in their interpretation and gave a vibe to the book, to the narrator, to the characters that I felt was so off as compared to what I believed the author intended, that I didn't want to listen to it anymore, and I switched to something else. Another issue that I have, I believe that I speak very good English, but I am not a native speaker, and I struggle with British accent, especially if the narrator speaks too fast. And even when I try to slow it down, I still struggle. That, for instance, has happened to me recently with White Teeth by Zadie Smith. The narrator spoke, I think, in the London variant of English and was so fast. And just the way he spoke, I had a hard time following and concentrating, and realized that it would be better if I read the physical book. But I've been so insanely busy in these past couple of weeks, just running and doing some bureaucratic stuff, that it's been sitting there. I read maybe 20% of it, and I am not advancing at all. I'm just listening to audiobooks and advancing with those. Now, that said, another area where I struggle with audiobooks is serious literary fiction that has a big, that leans heavily on style, such as William Faulkner, who's my favorite author. I'm unable to follow Faulkner's books in audio versions, even though I've read most of them and I know them well. It's simply an author that plays with language in such a way that I need to be able to see it. Now, there are people, and this can be a good thing if you want to learn English better, or whichever language you're listening in, but there is this immersive reading experience where you listen to the audiobook and you read the physical book at the same time, or the ebook. I have tried to do that, and it doesn't work for me at all, because I read faster than the narrator speaks. And to be able to speed the narrator up to keep up with me, if I do that, then they are too fast and it becomes a distraction and I can't follow. So in that sense, it just doesn't work for me. Finally, two very objective flaws to audiobooks are the fact that they are very expensive, and the fact that you cannot underline, and it becomes quite difficult to take notes if that's something you do, which is why I choose to consume audiobooks for books that don't require note-taking from me. If it's an author that I want to underline, that I want, whose sentences I want to retain, then I will go to the physical book and prefer to physically read. Now, as far as the price goes, it's normal that audiobooks are going to be more expensive because somebody had to record all that. There is a whole production behind it. But there are alternatives. I know that the one I use is Libby, which is the American library system. You have to join an American library, and if you do, you get free access to this app called Libby, which allows you to borrow, like in a library, ebooks, and to borrow audiobooks for free. So I think that's a great way. I'm sure there are a ton of other apps and other ways to borrow books for free or with a little membership fee, but that's the one I know. If you know of any others, please write in the comments below. All right, so all that said, if I have motivated you even a little bit to give audiobooks a try, I want to help you get started with that. And the best way to get started is to pivot from podcasts to nonfiction. So to listen to a nonfiction topic that you're very interested in, and something that's not going to require a lot of note taking from you, something that you can just consume and move on with your life. But this is not a channel where I talk about nonfiction. It's one, at least for now, it's one where I prefer to talk about novels and about fiction. And in that sense, I want to give you 5 books that I think are a fantastic way to get started with audiobooks, to fall in love with them, and to absorb them with more ease so that you can then later move on to more difficult stuff and to longer stuff. Oh yes, I forgot to say that one thing. I'm going to do it now. That usually when people see a huge book, like an 800-page, 900-page book, they can get intimidated. I know my kids, when they have to read, they will look at how many pages there are, and if they see a certain number, they start panicking, and then they're constantly counting how many pages they read and whether they read a lot or they didn't. So if the size of books intimidates you, when you have them in audio, that I think is much less of an issue, because whether a book is 7 hours or 5 hours long or 20 hours long, why would you care? If you're borrowing it, it's usually for 3 weeks. And if you commute to work an hour a day, in 20 days, you're going to be done for a 20-hour book. And 20 hours are super long books. Like, I think this one was maybe 20 hours. And was it worth it? Oh, it was so worth it. But what I want to say is that I think it's much less intimidating when you see the audiobook quantity than when you see the book physically. We are busy people. We have a lot to get to. We are in front of our screens all day. And I think that resting our eyes, especially when it comes to huge volumes, is always a welcome thing. So the fact that we have this way of consuming books, like I said, I think is wonderful. Now, to go back to my 5 recommendations to get you started with audiobooks, I would start with one that I would have never picked up because of its title, but it was part of our book club and of last year's reading challenge, where we had to read a book that won the Edgar Award, or author that won the Edgar Award. But that turned out to be a blast. I had so much fun with this book. It's a light read. And the woman who read it, I don't know the name of the actress. I'm going to look it up and put it on the screen. She did a phenomenal job. She was excellent. She was, when she was narrating the dialogue of this elderly Chinese lady who had this thing where she would say "aya" in this very specific, particular way. I had a vivid image of her in front of my eyes. She did a terrific job. So that one is a blast, and it's not going to be heavy for you in any way. And that is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. Now, I know there is also a part 2, a sequel to it. People say it's equally hilarious and fun. I did not read it or listen to it, but this first one I did, and it was a big surprise for me. I saw the name, the title, and I thought, oh, that's, Vera Wong, the wedding dress designer. I didn't even pay attention to the spelling, and I just dismissed it as a beach read that I wasn't interested in, and turned out that it was just a lot of fun, and it was such a good book, and that truly I have to reevaluate my prejudices when it comes to reading. So that's an awesome one. Another one, I have here a physical copy in my language of A Man Called Ove, but it doesn't have to be A Man Called Ove. It can be any comedy by Fredrik Backman. Like I said earlier, he is a master at comedy. He is so much fun, and his narrators for his comedic books are excellent. My favorites are A Man Called Ove, Brit Marie Was Here, and Anxious People, which is a blast. So any one of those is great. Many people like, I hope I'm going to say the title right. If I don't, I'll just correct it on the screen. My Grandmother Said to Say She's Sorry, something like that. I found it a bit over the top, but it was still a fun read. Not my favorite, but any audiobook by Bachman, you cannot go wrong. I'm pretty sure, just from reading his books and watching and listening to one of his speeches, that he has to be the nicest guy in the world. I would love to meet him. I would love to be his friend. And I'm pretty sure usually when I meet famous people, I get disappointed, but I know that he would not disappoint. My third recommendation is anything by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I would definitely choose Daisy Jones and the Six. I've talked about it in my video about my favorite 15 books from 2025. I thought that Daisy Jones and the Six was an amazing production. There were different actors reading different parts, so it felt like listening to a podcast about a famous rock band. I love listening and watching documentaries about rock bands. I couldn't believe these were all made up people. At one point, I actually Googled whether this band existed, and I missed its existence completely, but no, it didn't. And I loved it. I also like Malibu Rising, but these books are just like watching a movie. And so if you're not used to audiobooks and you want to have fun, that's one for you. Another one that I own a physical copy for is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now, full disclaimer, I did not listen to the audiobook. I actually read this one. I'm not a science fiction fan. I think that this might have even been my first science fiction read, and for me it was a bit too sciencey, which I'm not a fan of, but the book was very, very interesting, a lot of fun. The character of Rocky, who appears here, is one of the best and, how do you say, most funnest written? I have no idea how to say that, but anyway, one of the most fun characters I've seen in literature in a very, very long time. And I have heard and read from people on the internet and social media that the audiobook is a blast. So even though I read the whole thing, and even though it's not my genre, I am planning to listen to the audiobook because I want to see what all the fuss is about. And I'm recommending it because if everyone else is recommending it, there has to be something to it. I can't imagine how they pulled off Rocky and the protagonist because they don't speak the same language, and Rocky speaks in a language that's not really translatable to how we talk. So I'm curious to find out what they did. So do pick it up if you want to fall in love with audiobooks and with reading in general. And finally, if you prefer to read something more serious, I would recommend either The Dutch House or Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. Why? Because the Dutch House audiobook is read by Tom Hanks and the Tom Lake audiobook by Meryl Streep. So we are talking about some of the greatest actors of our time, and listening to them was a special treat for me. I read Tom Lake before listening to it. I listened to it when I heard it was narrated by Meryl Streep, and The Dutch House was something I just listened to, and it was truly a special experience. So I would say that any one of these, if you pick them up, you're going to love them, and that they can be a fantastic entryway to the world of audiobooks for you. Now, whether then you're going to be a purist and you're going to say, no, I did not read this. This is not going to count toward my reading goal because it wasn't physical reading, it was listening. That's your choice, you do you, but that's not a reason to deny yourself the fun, the entertainment, and the opportunity to do something different, to do something great, which I believe audiobooks truly do give us. So please just give it a try. And if it doesn't work out, at least you will know that you tried. I always say, if you do not try, you cannot succeed. So it might fail, but if you don't try, it has to fail. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. If you want to support me and my work, a great way to do that is to buy my book, Fathers Before Sons by Ksenia Popovic. The link is in the description below. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you're reading something great. I hope you're going to give audiobooks a try. Thank you for being here, and until next time.